am, inshallah, going to speak to you so very briefly about your place within creating your legacy. And I was listening to my teacher, and her name is Maryam, and she said that she went to, she was attending an event, and somebody came to her, and she's like, which people are the hardest to get to? And they're like, who? And they're like, it's the Muslims, mainly because they are so deeply committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, when I go to the workplace, I need to pray my salah. At dhuhr time, I get up, I pray. It doesn't matter if my colleagues are there. We have this element of respect. And that's why, subhanAllah, something we'll speak about, that piety does not mean invisibility. And that's why we need a discussion of what piety and what being a person and being a woman of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really is, that you can be an amazingly committed woman to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can raise your dua, you can raise your salah, you can raise your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you can still be part of society. Whereas many times we are sent this message for us to be amazing, righteous, pious, strong believers, that we have to stay at home. And that's why my first question was, where is a woman's place? A woman's place is not in the home. A woman's place is not in the kitchen. A woman's place is not in the workplace. A woman's place is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when our place is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when our priorities are straight, and when I speak about priorities, and when I speak about connection, I want to come from a place of vulnerability. I want to come from a place of struggle. And that's why, subhanAllah, when I think about coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I think about coming to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala broken and bruised and trying to pray my salah. And that's why my teacher would inspire me. And she would say, if you missed a salah, just pick yourself up and make sure you pray the second salah. Don't beat yourself down. If you don't know how to recite Quran correctly, ask yourself the question, what can I do to learn the Quran? If you look at other people and you're struggling with your salah, with your hijab, you ask yourself, how can I become better? And that's what my aim here is today, is that how can I inspire you to have a greater connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in private, so that, gushes out in your public life. How do I be, and this is the question I ask myself every day, how can I be a better believer? How can I be a better mother? How can I be a better sister, right? How can I be a better daughter? And that's what we want to do. What is my legacy? And that's why many times we are taught that the idea of a legacy is making a difference. And that's not true. Because many times within the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions people and He mentions righteous men and women. And does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention their names? Like, does He? No, He doesn't. But in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the akhirah, they are somebody. And that's why you need to ask. And I remember Sheikh Muhammad, Hafza Allah, he would say that if you want to show off to someone, show off to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want to show off to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we live in a time of incredible peer pressure, especially as women. I always say I hate Instagram. You go on there and, you look and sometimes you feel like, am I good enough? And truly we are. As long as you're great in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing else matters. And as Sister Khalila said, is finding that self-confidence and also finding that spiritual confidence. That irrespective of where I am right now, I have the ability to connect better, to be stronger. And that's why Allahumma balighna Ramadan. Ramadan is coming, it's Rajab, it's Sha'ban. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings you to places like this because He's reminding you that you are worth more, that you can achieve more. Your today is not your tomorrow, right? And I can tell you so many stories of so many sisters, subhanAllah, it wasn't them that led to greatness. It was them having this desire inside. And that's why there's an authentic hadith where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He does not look at your external appearance, He looks at your heart. And that's beautiful. You know why that's beautiful? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees that you want to be better. You want to do more. You want to connect more, but you're struggling. And it's not the struggle and it's not achieving a great goal that makes you amazing. It's those tiny steps to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are great. And I always say everybody sins differently, right? My sin is, your sin is not greater than my sin, and I'm not better than you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Alim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Hakim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Basir, He's As-Sami', He's all hearing, He's all seeing, He's all knowing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly knows where we are at. And that's why, subhanAllah, we have an element of character. And the Prophet ﷺ, we learn through his example that he was the greatest in character. And that inspires us for us to be better. So, number one, a woman's place is not in her house. It's not in her career. And that's why we're polarized, right? We have one camp that says women should stay at home. And then we have the other camp that says women should go outside. And even me sometimes, and I speak, from personal experience, when I'm outside and people ask me, oh, what do you do? I'm like, does anybody ever say, oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mum? Sometimes they do, and we should be proud to say that. But many times we have to overcompensate. I do this, I do that, right? No, like, number one is your place is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you build it up, and then you look at where you are right now. And that's why, subhanAllah, and bless, when with my bio, like some of the bio was like 5 years ago, and some of the bio is right now. Where I was when I was single, which some of you maybe, I was in a very different place, right? Then when I was married with one child, I was in a very different place. Where I am right now, so number one is you need to live in your present. If you're single, you have time that we do not have, right? That's a blessing, and you need to make the most out of your time. 5 before 5, right? Make the most out of your time. And subhanAllah, I wish somebody had told me. I've been on a very long journey, right? I wish somebody had told me that this is the time now, if I want to, this is the time you have a really strong connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're at university, learn the Quran. You're at work, learn the Quran. Start a basic course about Islamic studies. Coming to talks like this is amazing and it's beautiful and you feel inspired. But you need something on a regular basis. You need mentors and you need teachers that you can turn to on, every single week, and you can come to them with your problems and they can help you answer that. So if you're not connected to a teacher, you should. And then you guys will ask the question like who, where? There are so many recommendations I can give. You have As-Salam, you have Rabata. Rabata Institute is absolutely amazing. Sheikha Tamara Gray. If you want to know about female scholars, we have Sheikha Muslimah Mel, we have Dr. Aisha Wazwaz, we have Ustadha Ansari. We have an ample amount of women that are just there to inspire you, right? So we have women all around us. So embark on a level of Islamic studies. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I have created humans and jinn to worship who? To worship me. So we are taught, and that's why I say Shaitan is very clever. When the Prophet ﷺ, at the conquest of Mecca, what did he do? He removed all the idols from the Kaaba, right? He removed them. And we had this idea that there is no idol worship in Islam anymore. And what does Shaitan do? Ibn Ata'illah, he made a statement. He says, your heart projects all the gods and all the beings that you give light to. And that's why sometimes you go to a person and you're like, I've told them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I've told them about Salah, and they just don't pray. That's because their hearts are projecting everything that they're feeding it, right? So the question I ask you right now, what are you letting in your heart? What is being projected in your heart? So going back to the Prophet ﷺ, he removed idols, but Shaitan, who's an expert, who's skilled, who's qualified, who has thousands of years of experience, what does he do? He creates idols in other forms. You go on YouTube, and I have 3 boys, right? And my focus right now is educating my 3 boys, especially when it comes to their Islamic studies. But I also know that I can't pour from an empty cup. I can't. If I'm not giving myself time, I'm not filling myself up if I'm not happy, then I can't be happy with them. So whilst I fill their cups, I fill my cup too. And that's a reminder to you all. Don't, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't expect women to be sacrificial lambs, that we give up everything for our husbands and for our children at the expense of ourselves. And that is why when Hajar alayhi salam and when Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, when they went out in the desert, and Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, he started walking away. Hajar alayhi salam, she's thinking to herself, where are you going? But she has this strong yaqeen and this hope, and she knows that something is going on. I don't understand it, and it's really difficult. And what we do is we remove the emotions from, subhanAllah, if my husband came to me and he dropped me off to a desert, I'm like, 999, right? I wouldn't even get out, and he'd be like, I wouldn't even ask him that question because I don't have that faith. She turns around and she asks the question. She's like, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell you to do this? And he turns around and he says yes. And some people ask the question, like, how can a husband ever leave his wife? But they had this yaqeen and they had this certainty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They know when they get up in the morning, who gives them life? When they have, who does your food come from? Where do the trees come from? When you look at the birds, who do they come from? Their belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so strong that they associate everything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when she hears that my husband is walking away and he's due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she's like, you're just my husband, right? You give me food and maybe you give me money. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me life. You walk away, I know he will take care of me. And that's exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that story teaches us that we have people in our lives like our husbands or our fathers that we love dearly and we respect and we admire them. But ultimately, when you enter your grave, you are going alone. So remember, and that is why relationships are not easy. Relationships are never easy. Even within the relationship of marriage, you go through different phases. The honeymoon phase, and then you have children and it changes, and then the children move and maybe you gain a bit of that, your life back, but you go through different stages. So whatever stage you're going through, if number one, your place is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you will always aim to be just. You will always aim to be better. You wake up in the morning and you had an argument last night with your sibling. You're like, I need to do better today. And you do your istighfar. And it's Rajab right now, and we should be doing our istighfar anyway. We're like, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. Not astaghfirullah for the sister, or like a sibling, or like a friend. Astaghfirullah for ourselves. We truly need the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we are drowning in sin, and we are drowning in doubts, and we are drowning in passing sins. You go on Instagram and you make the mistake of clicking on your feed and you're like, astaghfirullah. You go outside and you see something, you say astaghfirullah. Your son doesn't listen to you and you're like, I'm going to be patient today, and then you're not patient and you're like, astaghfirullah. So as believers, our istighfar and our dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it builds a dome around us. And that's what made the women and the men in the past so great. Because whenever it came to the relationship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they weren't carrying the burden of ghafla, of heedlessness. They were constantly in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they chose to hang out with people carefully. And that's why hanging out is not just choosing your friends wisely. Hanging out is, where are you spending time online? What are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you letting inside? So, I'm wary of going over time. Okay, so one thing I want to mention is that also in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions personalities and what made these women great. So when we think about Khadija radiallahu anha, people will always say she's a businesswoman, and she was wealthy and she was a leader. Khadija radiallahu anha wasn't necessarily known for that. Khadija radiallahu anha was known for her piety and her righteousness. And many times we bring women forward for our personal aims of projecting this idea that I have to be present and I have to be visible, without the realization that what made these women great was their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was great, then they were able to make a difference. And we know Aisha radiallahu anha, they say like a quarter of Islam, Islam wouldn't be in its place right now without Aisha radiallahu anha. There are over 25 women that are mentioned in the Quran, and that's why when people ask that the Quran is not for women, and you're like, where are you coming from? Right? The Quran is for women. We have an entire surah that's, it's Maryam. And we have an entire surah of An-Nisa because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is concerned about you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is worried about his female servants and his female slaves. And we have no problem using the word slave because what we do when we do sujood, we say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I am not a slave to my desires, to my hawa. You know, every time I feel like backbiting or slandering, I'm going to say astaghfirullah, I'm not going to engage in it. I'm not going to submit to that. I'm going to submit to Al-A'la, who is so high, because I believe that death is inevitable. And you know, subhanAllah, I always say to people, I travel to give lectures, not as much anymore, because I'm a big believer that unless you're not making a difference in your local community, you can't justify making a difference outside. You can't. If you're not making a difference in your home with your children, I can't even justify being active in my community. But all of those come with a struggle, right? That's why some of you will come and be like, my parents, they're not listening. I'm telling them to pray salah. No, you do your best and then you try and do a bit more. So you do your best within whatever role you are. Once again, if you're single, gain knowledge. If you're married and you know, with your children, ask yourself, how much time do I have? And that's why, subhanAllah, with me, I analyzed. I'm like, I think about 2 years, I told myself, oh my God, I'm really struggling with my salah. I always prayed. But I'm like, okay, you know what? I need to pray more nafil. And I'm like, I have kids and like they're jumping on me and they're kicking me, which they are, by the way. And I'm like, you know, I can't focus. And you know, subhanAllah, I would ask myself the question, when they go to sleep, do I get up and pray? And I'm like, so it's not that I don't have time. It's that I don't have will, you know? And when you come to that realization that it's a question of will, then you can focus on what is the real issue rather than what excuses you are making. And as Sheikh Muhammad, he said it beautifully. And you know, when someone passes away, you remember what they've said. He said, give your excuses a black eye. Anytime something comes or someone comes to distract you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, say, I'm better than this. So what I want to end on is I want to give you a few tips. And the lady, one of the amazing believers that I want to mention was Asya alayhi salam. And the reason why I bring up Asya alayhi salam is because Asya alayhi salam is the epitome of an amazingly beautiful influencer. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. You know, she had beauty, she had status, and she had real status. You know, not like many people there. They're not really that famous. And that's why they say that if you took away their Instagram accounts, many of them, like, they wouldn't be famous anymore. She had real status. And Asya alayhi salam, despite having everything from a dunya perspective that many of us aspire to, you know, we think, oh, I wish I could look like that. She has such nice skin, or she has 3 kids and I have 1. She has a nice house and I'm on like rent or something. We're always comparing. Asya alayhi salam had everything and she gave it up for who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he became her priority, because she came to the realization that I will pass away, and my passing away is not tomorrow or when I'm married or when I'm 50 or when I'm 100. It's like the people in Turkey, they never anticipated that I will pass away as a 5-year-old, as a 10-year-old, as someone, you know, I've just completed my medical degree and I'm going to become that doctor, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes my life. So my life can be taken away from me, and I have true yaqeen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Rabb and the creator, and I come to that perception in an intelligent way. We as Muslim women, as Sister Khalila said, we are intelligent women, right? We come to that realization. And that's why when I speak to my colleagues, and you know, we go and we speak to the chief nurses in the NHS and stuff, and they come and they're like, oh, we haven't really spoken to Muslim women before on a professional level. And I'm like, speak to us, right? And I'm like, I am a practicing Muslim. I'm like, I need to pray. I need to pray my salah. We were in Waitrose the other day, and my colleague was there, and it was our 3rd or 4th meeting. I'm like, I need to pray Asr. And I just prayed behind her. And she's like, do you mind? I'm like, I don't mind. I'd rather pray in the house because it's more comfortable, but I know before I get there, it will finish. And remember, I have this confidence in my faith that has come over a long period of time. I was given a halaqah, and a sister, she's from Yemen, she's like, is that okay to do in the UK? I says, it's okay for me, but it may not be okay for you. You need to find a comfort level that works for you. And that's really important. Don't ever listen to a lecture and think, oh, you know, I need to be like that. You can be inspired, but do not put yourself down in the process of trying to learn, trying to be better. So Asya alayhi salam, she makes the dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She says, رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي عِنْدَكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ in Surah At-Tahrim, verse 11. And she makes the dua, she says, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, build me a house next to you in Jannah. So I don't want to have these houses in Dubai, or like I don't want to have these houses in these like major palaces that people are just making videos about. And I want to have a house next to you because that is real and that's more important and that's everlasting. And that's what you should aim for. You know, subhanAllah, in this country, you never truly own your house. You don't even own the land that you live in. And from an Islamophobic perspective, like a lot of people, they don't even really see you as British or as citizens. A lot of people do, but like this dunya is fleeting. It doesn't hold much value. But the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that even if the day of judgment is coming, plant the seed. Meaning you live in the dunya and you make the most out of it, and then you live as if you would die tomorrow. And subhanAllah, last night my 2-year-old, he threw my laptop down the stairs. And then he smiled at me. And I'm like, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. And alhamdulillah, it's working, right? So, and I'm like, and I had to have this conversation with myself. I paid a lot of money for that laptop because I do my work and I make workbooks. But I said, it's only dunya. Right? It's only dunya, even though he was laughing at me when he was doing it. I'm like, it's dunya, alhamdulillah, it doesn't matter. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make you go through losses and you'll come to those realizations. Every time you go through those losses, even if it's difficult, you do your hamd. You know, alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, irrespective of the situation, as difficult as it is. And I say that my mother's suffering from cancer right now. You know, subhanAllah. So this is not just about a laptop. This is about the people that you love so dearly, and you have those breakdowns every once in a while. But ultimately, and I'm the practicing sibling, and I tell my siblings that this is dunya. Like, these challenges in life remind us, how can we improve as a family? How can I improve as a person? So the final story I want to end with, but I just want to give you a summary of what I mentioned so you go back with something, right? Number one, my aim was to remind you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be a priority in your life. That every time you say Allahu Akbar, you remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater than your friends and your peers and your colleagues and your desires, that He should be your number one, and you never give up that journey until you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a never-ending journey. You fall 1,000 times, it doesn't matter. People judge you, it doesn't matter. As long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there, and as long as you're having that conversation with Him, that's enough. Number two is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions women in the Quran, and what made them amazing was their righteousness and then their morality. And then they built their achievements and their successes on top of that. So you want to be a doctor, be a doctor. You want to be a teacher, you want to be a scientist, you want to be an engineer, be everything. But make your foundation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and at least you'll get reward for all of that, right? Otherwise, you will achieve the top position. And we see it all the time, you know, subhanAllah, you achieve the top position and you think you have Iman, and then that promotion comes and your values shift. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your priority, you know, you will have this spiritual confidence and people will respect you for that. And then I want to end with this story because it's amazing. And this will explain what dunya is. So Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he was traveling with with a companion, with a friend, a traveling companion. And they were walking and they had 3 pieces of bread. One was for Prophet Isa alayhi salam, one was for his companion, and one was just an extra. And so Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he had his, the companion had his, and then Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he got hungry. And then he turned around to his companion and he's like, where's the bread? Like, you know, let's share it. And his companion turns around and he's like, I have no idea where that is, right? And I'm like, using expressions, and he's like, I have no idea where that is. And Prophet Isa alayhi salam is thinking, like, I know you know, right? And he's like, I have no idea where it is. So Prophet Isa alayhi salam was given miracles by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this story was told to us by Dr. Akram al-Nadwi. It's a beautiful story, changed my life. So Dr. Akram al-Nadwi, he mentioned that Prophet Isa alayhi salam has miracles given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he gets 3 molds of sand, and he turns them into gold by the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, if you tell me where the bread is, I'll give you the gold. And the companion's like, damn right, like, give me the gold. And it's like, okay. So Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he looks at his companion in a kind of a tragic way, because that's dunya right there. And he's like, you've got the company of the Prophet. You know, you've got the reminder there. So don't ever think, and remember the story of Shaitan, he was a righteous jinn. You know, he had the epitome of status, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, his downfall was his arrogance. And his downfall was spiritual and religious arrogance, right? And that teaches us so much. So Prophet Isa alayhi salam walks away and he's left with these 3 pieces of gold. And I need your help here, by the way. So then come 2 robbers. Okay, so then come 2 robbers and they see the 3 pieces of gold and they kill the companion and they get really excited. They're like, we've got 3 pieces of gold, we're rich, we're wealthy. And so now you have, how many dead bodies do you have? We have 1 dead body. And you have 2 robbers. And you have 3 pieces of gold, right? 3 molds of gold. So now as they're really excited, and eventually they're like, I'm hungry. Like, I need food. And then they decide that one of them will go and get the food and the other one will guard the gold. And so as the companion starts to walk, one of the robbers starts to walk away, Shaitan's come and he's like, you can keep that gold for yourself. He's like, you know, get some food, poison it and give it to him. And then as he's walking away, his other companion's like, oh, you can keep the gold. That when he comes back, get a stone and just kill him. So they're both plotting against each other due to greed. So now when his companion, when whoever went to get the food, he comes back, he's poisoned the food. His other friend comes and he gets a stone. As he's about to give him the food, he kills him. So how many dead bodies do we have? 2. We have 2 dead bodies. We have some food. We have 3 molds of gold. Okay. So now, as he kills his friend, he's like, still hungry. And then he eats the food. So how many dead bodies do we have now? We have 3 dead bodies. So now you have 3 dead bodies, 3 molds of gold, and you have food. And then Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he comes back and he's like, subhanallah. He's like, this is the epitome of dunya. Death will overcome you. The worldly possessions you have, you will leave behind. And the food is what you need in this dunya, and you're not really going to take with you. So the reminder there is only collect what you're going to take and make that your priority, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the rest easy. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. And barakallahu feekum for listening so nicely.